I think sometimes to understand what a thing is, it helps to understand what it isn't. It helps to see the contrast, as Jesus contrasted when he got ready to talk about how I've come to give you life. He could have just said that, but he contrasted it with the thief. He said, the thief comes to kill, steal, destroy. That's the bad side. But here on the plus side, in contrast, I came to give you life. So before we talk about this life, this joy that Paul is talking about, how he says none of these things move me, and what Paul discovered, let's talk about the other side of it. How to have a life without joy, and what that's all about. And it's found in Ecclesiastes. Now, this is probably not a book that you read every day of the week, because if you're not depressed already and you read the book of Ecclesiastes, you'll be depressed before you finish. Because the Ecclesiastes is written by a man named Solomon, who basically, when you get into this, you'll see that he is in a bad frame of mind. Now, this is a good opportunity to point out something. Everything in the Bible is inspired by God, but it's all inspired in like Dominic said. Everything's not just the way we think it ought to be. Every book of the Bible, you don't just open it and say, "Thus saith the Lord." Sometimes we learn from things that He lets human beings pour out their human side of things, and that's what we have in Ecclesiastes. Notice what verse 1 says. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 1. The words of the preacher. Now see, right up front we're told, he doesn't say, "Thus saith the Lord." He says, the words of the preacher, meaning him, Solomon. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. So this now is not God talking, this is Solomon talking. I say that to you because when we read what we're going to read next, I want you to understand this is not God telling you how things are from a heavenly point of view. What we're going to read, this is Solomon telling you how things are from a human point of view. From a human perspective, from a life lived from a human, natural, carnal perspective. And notice this is written at a time before Jesus came to give that abundant, over that higher life. This is written at a time and by a person who's living natural, human, physical human life. And by the way, written by a man who we're told is the wisest of all the men who lived with that kind of life. So he knows what he's talking about. And notice the very first thing he says in verse 2. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The word vanity there means emptiness, or unproductive, or fruitless, or futile. It means futile. Now listen, I guarantee you, God doesn't come along and say, your life is futile. That's not God talking, that's Solomon talking. And what he's going to say to us in this book of Ecclesiastes is, he says, I've done everything, I've tried everything, I've looked around the world, I've observed everything, and I'm the wisest guy there ever was, and I want to tell you, it's all futile. It's all vain. It's all empty. And that's what he says. Human life, natural life, this carnal life is futile and empty, vain. Elliot, I don't know I haven't looked it up. I'm taking a chance here to have you put up the Amplified, because I haven't looked it up ahead of time. Let's just see what it says. Just to see if we get that kind of thought. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vapor of vapors. Futility of futilities, said the preacher. Vapor of vapors. Futility of futilities. All is vanity. Emptiness, falsity, and vainglory. Well, none of those things are good. Those are all things that are empty and don't satisfy or don't give us anything. Okay, Elliot, go back to King James and verse 3. I'm just going to read a little bit, and I just want you to get the tenor of what he's saying. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Now notice that expression, under the sun. Notice how many times he says that. Because he is describing human life, natural life that's vain and empty, as life lived under the sun. In other words, in this natural world, under this natural sun. He says, what profit is there in all the labor under the sun? One generation passes away, another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. In other words, one generation comes, they go, another one comes, nothing changes. The same thing. The sun also ariseth, the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about to the north, and whirleth around continually. The wind returneth again, according to its circuits. It's all just this endless cycle of futility, not going anywhere, not producing anything, just wind going to the south, wind going to the north, the sun comes up in the east, goes down in the west, same old thing, same old thing. That's what he's saying. Verse 7, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Notice he says, you can't be satisfied. Verse 9, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there's no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it might be said, See, this is new? It hath already been of old time, which was before us. There's no remembrance of former things. Neither shall there be any remembrance of the things that come with those that are to come with those that shall come after. I, the preacher, was king in Israel over in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. Notice again, under heaven or under the sun. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. Notice that expression again. And behold, all is vanity, vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. Notice how bitter and as we might say, bummed out he is as he's saying this. That which is bitter cannot be crooked cannot be made straight. That which is wanting cannot be numbered. I communed with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. By the way, he means knowledge that's found under the sun. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. And I perceive that this also is vexation of spirit. And in much wisdom is much grief. And he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. So we might say in this, here's a guy who is not enjoying life. Is that fair to say? Have I summed it up right? That does not sound like Solomon is enjoying life. In fact, he says, it's empty, it's bitter, what's crooked can't be straightened out, it's empty, it's vain. Everything under the sun is futile. It's just the sun comes up, sun goes down, nothing changes, nothing gets any better. It's just endless cycles that can't be broken. That's how life under the sun is. Now, keep that in mind. Turn over with me. Let's go back to Paul again. We're talking about Paul, and this is our contrast. Look at Acts chapter 26. This is Paul talking about his conversion. And I just want you to notice the words that he uses in describing his conversion. Paul was a man who was persecuting the church, and he had letters to go to Damascus and persecute the Christians there. And Jesus appeared to him. Now, you know what? Jesus can do that. He can do whatever he wants to do. You know, he doesn't have to, do any certain thing. If he wants to go appear to somebody, he can just jolly well do it, can't he? He can just go where he wants and do what he wants to do. When God exalted him to his right hand, he's made him King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I know that we say he's a soon-coming king, but listen, he's king already. We're not waiting for him to be king. He's king right now. That means he can go where he wants and do what he wants. If he wants to appear to a guy named Saul, he can appear to a guy named Saul. Is that all right? And so that's what he does here. Now listen, I want you to notice how Paul describes this appearance of Jesus to him. Let's see, Acts chapter 26. I like this one because he tells a lot of details. Let's see. Where do we want to start? Verse 12. Whereupon, as I went to Damascus with authority and commission from the chief priest, at midday, O king, listen to what he says. At midday, you know what midday means? What is midday? Noon, right? And you know what about noon? About the sun. It's the highest it is for the day, right? Midday. The sun's at its highest point. At midday, O king, I saw in the way a light from heaven above the brightness of the sun. Now this is important, I think. I don't think these are just idle words here. He said, I was going along, and it was at the brightest point of when the sun shines, midday, and I saw, O king, a light from heaven above, higher, in other words, above the brightness of the sun, shining round about me, and them which journeyed with me. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking to me, and saying to me in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It's hard for you to kick against the pricks. And I said, Who art you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. Now notice that Saul, who was traveling along to persecute the Christians, at midday he saw a light, he says, his expression, above the brightness of the sun. And out of this light, above the brightness of the sun, Paul heard a voice. And he says, I'm Jesus. Jesus spoke to him and changed his life and gave him a different kind of perspective. Jesus imparted to Paul that kind of life he was talking about in John 10. I've come that you might have life. He imparted that higher life. But I want you to notice, contrast here with what Paul says to what Solomon said. Solomon described life under the sun, but here Paul, if you can pardon a play on words, Paul discovered there's a different kind of life in the sun. In Christ, that is. He discovered a life in Christ that's higher than life lived under the sun.